right? So something pretty interesting is going on in the United States. What we're having now is we're having a debate. Is the United States actually in a recession? This is a question. For some reason, I even got a Ben Shapiro show YouTube video recommended in my home feed where he's basically saying, oh, well, look, they're just changing the definition of a recession now to avoid calling it a recession. So the question is, are we in a recession? It's a big debate. And what actually is a recession? And I will be answering those questions for you in today's video. Now, what we're going to be checking out here, which you can see is, first of all, say that the Fed has hiked interest rates once again. So it says Fed hikes interest rates another 75 basis points as recession warnings flash. The Federal Reserve announced another steep interest rate hike Wednesday, ramping up its efforts to bring inflation down from 4 decades high. The Federal Open Market Committee, the panel of Fed officials responsible for monetary policy, said Wednesday it would boost the central bank's baseline interest rate by 0.75 percentage points to a range of 2.25 to 2.5%. The Fed has now hiked interest rates by 75 basis points twice over the past 2 months. A remarkably fast increase is likely to slow the economy. All 12 voting members of the FOMC supported the rate hike. So, they're going to continue to raise it. It says that inflation has increased 1.2% in the last month, year on year. In the past year, it's increased by 9.1%, which is obviously, very, very high. It also acknowledges here, it says he also acknowledged the Fed has little ability to bring down food and energy prices, but would continue to hike rates if inflation didn't turn around. And so, there's this big issue of, okay, is raising inflation rates even going to solve or not inflation rates, sorry, interest rates? Is the Federal Reserve raising interest rates, which, by the way, it doesn't actually raise the interest rates itself. It's actually a recommendation. And then they have other interest rates, like I think they have interest rates on money that is exchanged between banks for reserve holdings. And then also, I think there's an interest rate on overnight reserve holdings. They use those to try to control the market. So they're not actually directly changing the interest rate to recommendation. But anyways, what they're doing here with this interest rate, there's a question of whether or not this is actually going to solve our issue, because do we have a supply or demand issue when it comes to our inflationary issues? I personally think that it's clearly a supply issue, heavily, that the supply chains, especially with now the Russia-Ukraine war, and then, you had the Beijing lockdown and all that stuff going on in China and all these different things. And a lot of areas that responded to the lower demand, like we see with oil, the oil industry, basically, they shuttered their oil refining and creation because there was such lower demand, because people weren't going outside as more for oil. But now that the demand for oil has gone up, supply has not responded to that increase in demand. So it's like a lot of these off balances. And so the question is, okay, do you tamper demand or do you try to increase supply? So especially with the whole Russia-Ukraine thing and how that's spiking up gas prices, I don't see how the interest rate increase is going to fix that. The interest rates are going to do things like, lower housing costs and stuff like that. Although even that, I'm not sure how much it's doing. So honestly, the interest rate hikes, I don't really see them doing anything, but, we'll see. But there's currently news coming out that basically, the economy is expected to have barely grown last quarter or may have contracted. And then I believe the quarter prior to that, it had actually contracted. So it says economists are forecasting the economy barely grew in the second quarter, and some expect that it actually contracted. The estimates show the economy may have grown by several tenths of a percent. Goldman Sachs expects a 1% increase, while Moody's Economics sees a 1% decline. The sluggish growth forecast followed the 1.6% decline in the first quarter, but there are plenty of forecasts for a shrinking economy, including the Atlanta Fed's GDP Now tracker, which is negative 1.2% for the second quarter. That would make it the second negative GDP report in a row, one of the signals that the economy is in a recession. However, economists are careful to point out that the strong labor market and other factors make a recession unlikely for now. They also note the National Bureau of Economic Research, the official arbiter of recessions calls, is not expected to declare one now. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell Wednesday said he does not believe the economy is in a recession. Quote, let's say it's negative. The headline everywhere is going to be, quote, recession. That's not how the markets think about it. But you'll see people screaming recession, said Michael Shoemaker, head of macro strategy at Wells Fargo. Then there will be a debate about it. It will matter more to the political types in the market. Some economists raised their forecast Wednesday ahead of the second quarter report after the monthly durable goods report came in better than expected, and advanced trade data showed the trade gap narrowed significantly. It says Goldman Sachs economists boosted their GDP forecast to 1% from 0.4% after the data. Quote, I think it's hard to see a recession when we created so many jobs. There are record unfilled positions, he said, noting job growth has been averaging about 500K a month. It's not consistent with the idea economy is in a recession. It's every single industry and in every corner of the country that is experiencing robust jobs growth. It's just not a recession. The economy added 372,000 jobs added in June. So this is the interesting thing, okay? Honestly, what we're looking at here is super, super fascinating. Our economic state right now, from a macroeconomic perspective, is truly, truly, fascinating. Recessions typically, post World War II, most of our recessions have actually resulted in inflation. There used to be a theory that basically you couldn't have high unemployment and high inflation at the same time. It was called the blanking on what it was called right now. It should come to me. But anyways, it was a curve that basically said that you have a choice between the Phillips Curve. That's what it is. It's the Phillips Curve. So basically, it was okay. You can either have high unemployment or high inflation, but you can't have both. So you could have high unemployment, low inflation, or you could have high inflation, low unemployment. But there's no way to have both at the same time. But with all the oil shocks that happened in the late 1900s, with the one in the early 1900s, I think it was 73, with Saudi Arabia leading the OPEC blockade after U.S. was rearming Israel in their war against the Arab nations in the Yom Kippur War, and then there was the Iranian Revolution, and then, that's why they took Saddam Hussein when he went into Kuwait, because they didn't want to allow too much oil consolidation, and Saddam could have taken all of those Arab countries very easily after taking Kuwait. But anyways, so that got proven wrong, but most of them post World War II have been inflationary, but our one in 2008 was actually resulting in deflation. Price had decreased, but there were also price decreases in the response to in what happened with the COVID recession. This one says this unusually large price decrease early in the pandemic made April 2020 a low base. It says between February and April 2020, when the pandemic is taking hold of the economy, level of average prices measured by the core PCE deflator fell 0.5% before beginning to rise again in May. Core PCE inflation leaves out volatile food and energy prices and thus provides a clear signal of inflation. However, the same base effects are expected to occur in most price series. So that's what we saw. We saw prices going down. Deflation is actually really, really bad unless it is a specific good deflation. Like, for example, let's say there's some new technology that makes creating computers cheaper, and so the prices go down. That's good deflation. But a general price decrease across the economy, that's actually really bad because it means the economy is contracting. And so what does a recession mean? It literally just means that the economy is receding. Now, how do you measure the recession? I think of like your hairline receding, right? It's going backwards. That's all receding means. So it means the economy is going backwards. Now, how the hell do you calculate that? What are the determinants to determine whether or not it's contracting? That's the big debate. Now, it's clear now. It's pretty clear. These are the dudes who are considered to be the authority by everybody, by the United States government and by academics and everybody. It's the NBER, National Bureau of Economic Research. I think I had said it was like the National Economics Relations Board previously. I got it mixed up, but it's this business cycle. I think it's like a committee. They're the ones who actually make the calls, and so they actually have changed it. Now, prior to this, it used to be a quarter, which 2 quarters, so 6 months of negative GDP growth. So it just means your GDP receding, going backwards, right? Gross domestic product, your total economy going backwards. And also some definitions had included also like a lower unemployment or a higher unemployment. Some of them had included that, but that was generally the definition. And in the UK currently, they still use the 2-quarter method, but now it's actually these guys, the NBER, the National Bureau of Economic Research, is these guys who are the determinants. It says, in the United States, the Business Cycle Dating Committee of the National Bureau of Economic Research, NBER, generally seen as the authority for dating U.S. recessions. The NBER, a private economic research organization, defines an economic recession as, quote, a significant decline in economic activity spread across the economy, lasting more than a few months, normally visible in real GDP, real income, employment, industrial production, and wholesale retail sales. Almost universally, academics, economists, policymakers, and businesses refer to the determination by the NBER for the precise dating of a recession's onset and end. And so what conservatives are going to come out here and say is, oh, it's a recession. We're in a recession. They're trying to change the definition. The liberals are trying to, they're trying to change the definition of what a recession is to avoid calling it that. That's not what it is at all. The definition changed a long time ago. In fact, our last recession was during coronavirus, and it was the NBER that made that determination. They made the call. They go based on a monthly basis, and bro, there's I don't even know how they determine recessions, honestly, because they have 20 different indicators. It's they have GDP and all this, and consumer confidence, and then industrial production and dildo sales, and it's damn, y'all have a lot of different points. So I don't even really know how they make those determinations. There's so many different points to hit on, so I genuinely don't know. But they make their calls. And dude, the reason why this is so weird is because the main thing that you associate with the recession is job loss and unemployment, right? But right now, businesses are begging people to work. They're literally everywhere you go still. It's not as many places, but even now, a lot of places have the now hiring signs up. Before, it was even more. But I think unemployment rate is below 4%, and you guys should know what the difference between the unemployment and the labor force is. If you're not looking for work, you're actually not considered unemployed. You're only considered unemployed if you're actually actively searching for work. And then if you're searching for more work but you can't get it, you're called underemployed. Let's say you're only working part-time but you're looking for a full-time job but you can't get it, that's called underemployed. But the labor force is actually the basically percentage of people who are of age, non-institutionalized people who are able to work. That's the labor force. So, there's a labor shortage. There's not enough people to fill the jobs that exist. And so that's why it doesn't really make sense to call it a recession. And that's what's so fascinating about this situation is there isn't high unemployment. So it's can you call it a recession? And the answer is no. We are point blank not in a recession. Like I said, the NBER, they are the authority on this, so they make the calls on this. We no longer go based off of the 2 GDP thing. But let's say hypothetically we were in a recession. It would be on purpose. The Federal Reserve is literally raising interest rates. When the Federal Reserve is raising interest rates, it's attempting to taper demand. Okay, that's what it's trying to do. It's attempting to taper aggregate demand so as to lower the total, the price index, the prices, right, of the economy. The price of general goods in the economy, right, aggregate price. That's what they're trying to do. That is receding the economy. You're going to lower the economy because what you're going to do is you're going to disincentivize borrowing. You're going to disincentivize purchasing and things like that, which are what continue the economy to grow. And so if we were in a recession, it would literally be on purpose. So it's oh, there's a recession. It's yeah, but that's on purpose to bring the economy back to what it is, because the idea is the economy is currently overstimulated and it needs to be destimulated. Now, again, like I said, I think we're running with more of a supply issue than we are a demand issue, especially when, there are two inflation ones. There's core inflation, which actually that excludes food and energy prices, which are hella volatile. And then there's headline inflation, which that's all goods across the market basket. The way they do it is they create a market basket where they put in a certain amount of goods into this basket, and then they calculate the total inflation over that. Also, you can just calculate inflation based on, specific goods, oil, blah, blah. You can look at those specifically. But anyways, so, it's very interesting to see what exactly is going on here, but I don't think the issues are really going to be solved much until there is supply chain getting better, until the supply chain improves, especially with specifically oil costs. How the fuck is raising interest rates going to lower gas prices? Could someone explain that to me? I'd love to know. How is that going to happen? All these, damn near, I just now seen them going below $6, but it's dog, how is the Fed raising interest rates going to do that? The biggest problem right now with the oil is there's Russia, but then also the oil companies they're making way more money with these higher oil prices than they were with lower oil prices with higher outputs. So they have no incentive to create more oil. Also, there's a lot of corporate, price fixing low key going on, and there's a lot of corporate consolidation. So there's not enough competition to really ensure that the economy is actually working, to make sure that, the economy is supposed to work how it's supposed to work. And, you got these oil companies who, they have no incentive. And like I said, demand shuttered during the pandemic, so they shuttered supply. Now demand has gone back up, but they have not responded by investing more money into creating more infrastructure to go back to the supply that they previously had. So it's just like, it seems more like a supply issue than it does a demand one. I think it's stupid to kind of go on the demand front. Now, some of the stuff like the housing and stuff is kind of out of whack, and so that's a good thing for it to go down. But super interesting to see. But the answer is we are not in a recession. Hands down, we are not in a recession. No, because the current authority, according to everybody, U.S. government, academics, everybody, the NBER, okay, National Bureau of Economic Relations, they're the ones who call the shots on the recessions. They go based on a monthly basis of about 20 different indicators that they use to determine whether or not we're in a recession. The old definition of 2 GDP negative is not in place anymore, so using that definition is just wrong. And honestly, when you look at the economy, it's not a recession because the main thing you associate with a recession is unemployment, right? And so with stagflation, we saw, in the 70s, where you have a recession, you have high unemployment, and you have high inflation. We don't have high unemployment. So, you have high inflation, and then like slight regression going on in the economy, although again, that's on purpose. So, based on our current definition of a recession, we're not in a recession. And no, the liberals didn't just now change the definition. The NBER has been the authority for at least since the Trump administration. Again, like I said, they were the ones that called the shot on the COVID era recession, which lasted like a month, I think, because the Federal Reserve obviously stepped in to prevent deflationary actions. But yeah, anyways, very interesting stuff going on. Interesting macroeconomic stuff going down.